How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. I'm glad we made it happen.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So let's get to it then. You know how this works, right? So I set a 5 minute timer. I'll be asking you questions, and when the timer goes off, we stop. We won't really stop right when the timer goes off, but yeah.
Okay.
Okay, amazing. So why don't you start out by telling us who you are and what you do?
My name is Danielle Combs. I'm a New York-based creative who works as Hypebae's creative editor. And as part of my role there, I basically do a mix of branded content, developing a lot of top-tier concepts. And then I also work on developing larger fashion features or editorials for my own editorial franchise that we do for Hypebae called Behind the Atelier, where we actually pull back the curtain on, really new emerging designers, and showcase their creative and design process through basically a essay and then a long form editorial and Q&A. So that's like a little bit of mix of what I do.
Yeah.
It's nice to, have the balance between branded content and also editorial.
Yeah, that's so cool. And it's really cool that you get to give exposure to new designers as well, which I'll have more questions about that later. But
Yeah.
how did you get where you are right now? Like what led to this career?
Yeah, so actually like I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and one of the, first ways I guess I cut my teeth in the industry was I actually was an intern at Vogue, at the West Coast office. So I worked with Lisa Love a lot, helped a lot with like the CFDA Fashion Fund runway show, and I would still like assist on Vogue shoots when they would come to LA. And then after that, I started working at Refinery 29 for a little bit. Kind of jumped to a couple different places. Like I did a brief stint at Kim Kardashian West, with her like
Wow.
mobile app and website doing fashion content for her platforms. And I've been in New York for like 4 or 5 years now. And when I made the jump, I was the digital editor at V. And then I also worked at the Zoe Report for a couple months too, as a contributor. And then after that was when I got brought on at Hypebae. And I've been in this role for almost 2 years now.
Nice. Sounds like you jumped around and kind of like found your way to something that really works for you. And
Yeah. And I mean, I think for me, like, I'm really, really, just obsessed with anything about fashion. I think there's just so many, facets of it that I feel like is relevant. And so for me, being able to sort of get my footing in at those places, I think gave me a lot of like knowledge and experience to say, like, okay, well, do I want to be a stylist or do I want to focus more on the editorial side? And that,
Mhm.
definitely led me to wanting to like focus my efforts on the editorial side.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's go back to what you were saying, about featuring new designers. What makes a designer, like what stands out for you when you see a designer, or like what makes a designer stand out for you? And I think also I would love to talk about like what makes a designer's a successful designer in your eyes. Like, does the designer need to be wearable? What's wearable for you? Yeah, just talk about that.
I think for me, like what stands out is I'm a really really huge proponent of smaller emerging brands. I really like supporting brands that I feel like their work and their designs is coming from a more personal place. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of the luxury fashion houses. But what stands out to me a lot of times is people that do things unconventional. Maybe it's a little avant-garde, maybe it's a little over the top. um, I love statement making pieces. Some brands that stand out to me that are currently some of my favorites are definitely Christopher John Rogers, I love BP Bella. There's a new designer, Cheyenne Kimura, who's coming out of Los Angeles, and she
Mm,
basically does all of this insane, like couture Baroque detailing on denim pieces
wow.
that I love. And also, like Chapova Luena is another brand I love. Just because I think sustainability is, like really important, especially given how wasteful and excessive the fast fashion industry is.
Mhm.
And so I think supporting smaller brands
Oh,
who,
that's the
um,
timer, but you can continue.
but I think like supporting smaller brands, that have their own perspective or point of view is really something that I gravitate towards.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you also mentioned that you like more avant-garde pieces. Your personal style is amazing. It's
Thank you.
like far from casual, and I think that, this year everybody's really moved on to the more casual, basic, like, I mean, I live in sweatpants these days. It's sad, but it's true. What motivates you to keep your style the way that it is? Has your style changed this year at all? And yeah.
Um, I think for me, like fashion is definitely a nonverbal greeter for me. Like it's almost like my love language. Like I use it as a way to communicate, like with whatever my mood is for the day or whatever I'm feeling. That sort of dictates how I dress. Um,
Mhm.
and sorry, what was your second question?
So like what
Oh, if my
has your style changed this year and like what motivates you to maybe not change it? Yeah.
I I would say like my style has, maybe changed in the sense that like, if I'm at home, maybe like I'll wear like a cool festive sweater and like wear earrings. Like I think for me, like one way to stay sort of grounded with my personal style is the fact that, accessories for me is like a big thing. Like even if it's my
Mm,
glasses or earrings. Um, and so even if I'm wearing like a hoodie and maybe it's like a tracksuit, like I still like to incorporate those little personal pieces that like make me feel more like myself if I'm not, wearing like a full look per se.
yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. All right, so then let's move on to our last question, which is, obviously we're all going through a lot of change. What is your one wish for the fashion industry and maybe our culture in general?
I mean, I have a lot of wishes for the fashion industry.
Yeah.
I think obviously diversity and inclusivity is a huge issue, like with a lot of publications, and I think the fashion industry needs to do a better job of obviously, making space for people of color and allowing like
Mhm.
those executive leadership positions for people of color to open up and just more opportunities in general. Even having people of color working in an atelier, which you rarely ever see. And I also would just love to see more designers continue to break away from the current fashion, cycle and system
Mhm.
and really
Yeah.
sort of adopt more of like a seasonless, method because I think it's totally excessive to have, fall, spring, summer, pre-fall resort. I think it's a lot. Like I think if a lot of, designers, especially luxury fashion houses, focused on maybe not doing as many collections and focused on using dead stock fabrics or like more sustainable materials, like
Mhm.
I think that would, make a huge difference just with like our carbon footprint because so much goes to waste, especially even when you look at what fast fashion is like doing to the environment.
No, absolutely. And we've concluded spring summer market. Were you taking part of market at all? Like, was there a lot of were there digital fashion shows that you were watching or?
Yeah, I mean, I always usually catch up on the shows
Mhm.
like I mean there was a couple digital ones. I mean, again, my personal favorite was Christopher John Rogers this season. Like I
Mhm.
could sing praises about him all day. Bottega Veneta I think always does like a beautiful collection. um, Balenciaga are some of my other favorites, but I really tend to look towards like, like those smaller emerging independent brands.
Yeah. And were you noticing that people were already changing their habits in the way that they were showing, or, you know?
Definitely. I think a lot of brands kind of pivoted, especially with COVID, to come up with like engaging ways to showcase their collections. Like I know earlier, like during the season when menswear was coming out, like I love what Prada did where they actually, got influential creatives like artists to
Mhm.
basically put, 5 different stamps on different fashion videos like through their artistic lens. And I thought that was a really interesting way to showcase a collection and have these, creatives basically interpret it on their own terms. Um, and so I think it's been really interesting seeing what people come out with because I know like even Gucci's planning to do Gucci Fest,
Yeah.
which I'm very interested to see. So I think it's interesting just to see brands, pivot and devise new ways of showing their collections that don't require people to like physically be in that space to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. This was so
Yeah.
insightful, and yeah, it's just always so good. Actually, I do have one more question that I
Okay.
want to ask you. I just feel like, nowadays our society can be so polarized, and like part of it is because everybody is just looking to one source for information, like people choose one source and then that's where they get their information. So then that's the only opinion that they're gonna follow and believe. Do you have any recommendations for like different sources, or how do you recommend for people and for yourself, for Hypebae, you have to keep your mind open to different things and like kind of follow different cultures. Do you have recommendations on sources to do that?
I mean, I think a big thing for me is I basically like always, because like obviously with the internet and digital publishing, there's so much material out there. I really tend to gravitate towards writers where their work personally resonates with me. Like, for instance,
Mm,
Laura Pitcher, I love. Sarah Radin is another writer I love. I'm always looking just for great writers that produce really just like innovative content.
mm,
Another big thing for me is just I've, over the course of my life have just amassed a lot of fashion books on all different cultures. Like I was very much still am into Japanese fashion, like
mm-hmm,
Harajuku style. And I think for me, like a lot of times, I would go to the library to check out various books and read
mm,
them because I think there's so much you can learn when, you're reading like a book that is a credible source and is offering you something that like maybe you wouldn't get from an article. And so for me it's like, especially as an editor, I think like constantly reading up, staying in the know. Like I also love Business of Fashion. I think they do
mm-hmm.
great op-ed pieces. That's
Yeah.
another side I think is a good resource because they're talking and examining about a lot of the shifts that are occurring. Um, so I think that's like a great resource. And obviously just sites like even them, Teen Vogue, I think does a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think those are all platforms that are doing really well in terms of using their platform to also obviously talk about fashion and beauty, but then use it to also bring up, activism and social issues that we need to
Mm-hmm.
work on as a country. And I think that's really vital because I think so much too with fashion, it ends up being informed obviously by what's happening in culture and in
Mm-hmm.
society. So I think if you're aware of like those things in culture and the world in general, you'll see how that's impacting how designers even produce clothes or how their
Mm-hmm.
designs are, made for that specific season. I think it's all interwoven and connected.
Yeah. Amazing. And I really love what you said about going back to even books, because I feel like our past, our history really can inform what's happening. And sometimes when it's hard to like zoom out of everything, right in front of our face or the messaging that is given to us, it's so nice to just go back to history and kind of compare and see a bigger perspective.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like my main thing is just, reading other literatures, because I think that always just educates you on another level, which is different from just like a standard article.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Danielle. I'll let you go. I promise this was going to be short. But yeah, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'll talk
Okay.
to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.